Welcome, aspiring leaders and students of diplomatic history. I'm your host and lead diplomatic historian for today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most pivotal, nail-biting moments in our recorded history. We're opening up a highly classified strategic archive to uncover the critical lessons of a true crisis. We're talking about a moment when the fate of, well, absolutely everything hung by a thread. So let's just dive right in. We're going to deconstruct exactly how deeply opposing factions actually managed to find common ground in the face of total destruction. And by studying this, we're not just looking at the past. We are breaking down the literal mechanics of leadership and authority. Here is our roadmap for this archive. We've got 6 parts. First, the fall of a kingdom. Second, Ilyan Marr's emergency council. Third, a debate of 3 powers. Fourth, defining demonic strength. Fifth, preparing for the greater war. And finally, lessons for future leaders. All right, starting with part 1, the fall of a kingdom, the inciting incident. The catalyst for this unprecedented emergency was, frankly, absolute and terrifying. The source text we have is chillingly brief but so densely packed. It states that a dark entity known as Belial completely erased an entire kingdom from existence. I want you to notice the specific language of the archive here. It doesn't say he defeated them. It doesn't say he conquered them. He erased them. Poof, gone. This staggering loss of life and this massive, sudden power vacuum demanded an immediate diplomatic response just to prevent total global annihilation. Because this wasn't just some military defeat, right? It was a fundamental disruption to the very fabric of their reality. It exposed a massive hidden risk of power that literally no one had accounted for. That takes us right into part 2, Ilyan Marr's emergency council, the silent assembly. So, following Belial's destruction, we see the crucial intervention of a figure named Ilyan Marr. Stepping up as a desperate, yet totally objective mediator, Marr immediately summoned the world's most powerful but fundamentally divided factions. They were brought into what the historical records describe as a tense, silent assembly hall. Literally, a dark hall where the sheer gravity of the situation just hung incredibly heavy in the air. In fact, records note that for the first 3 hours, not a single word was spoken, just complete silence. The whole purpose of this gathering was to collectively analyze and figure out the true nature of this demonic threat before time ran out. Moving to part 3, a debate of 3 powers clashing philosophies. Now, before they could fight the enemy, they absolutely had to understand the weapon. And inside that dark hall, the debate fractured into 3 distinct philosophies. The Earth Masters argued for cosmic equilibrium, basically maintaining that power is all about natural balance. The Angels, on the other hand, demanded strict moral responsibility, viewing power through the lens of divine duty. And then you have humanity, fiercely defending individual liberty and freedom of choice. So you've got 3 totally distinct moral obligations clashing in one single room. You can really see the direct friction here between the Earthmasters and the Angels. On one side, the Earthmasters are advocating for cosmic balance. They view power as a natural system, something that self-corrects like an ecosystem. To them, it's an objective force. But on the flip side, the Angels argue for moral responsibility. To them, power is this incredibly heavy divine burden, requiring strict ethical oversight and unwavering duty. It is your classic philosophical stalemate, power as a law of nature versus power as a rigid test of morality. And Ilyan Marr, as the primary mediator, had the absolutely monumental task of somehow bridging this gap. Meanwhile, humanity stood apart. Their core philosophy really threw a wrench into both of those other arguments. They argued that the ultimate determining factor in any conflict, and really in the application of any strength, is the absolute freedom to choose how that power is utilized. They focused entirely on the user. Essentially, their argument was that you can't regulate power with cosmic scales or divine laws, because at the end of the day, a human hand holds the sword and a human mind makes the choice. Which brings us to part 4, defining demonic strength, a neutral force. To forge any kind of working alliance, Ilyan Marr had to help synthesize these wildly different beliefs into a single, unified understanding. And through some incredibly intense mediation, they actually reached a profound consensus. They clearly defined demonic strength. Rather than labeling it as this inherent, untamable evil, they agreed it's actually a completely neutral force. To use a simple analogy, think of it like a roaring river or a blazing fire. A fire can heat a home, right? Or it can burn a village to the ground. The fire itself doesn't have a moral compass. Its impact is purely dependent on how it's harnessed by the person wielding it. By framing the enemy's strength this way, they stripped away all that mystical terror and reduced it to a tangible tool that could actually be countered. The absolute crux of this entire assembly is captured perfectly in one profound archival quote. Power itself was neither good nor evil. Only the heart of the one who wielded it gave it meaning. This is brilliant because it perfectly synthesizes all three viewpoints. It satisfies humanity's focus on choice, it satisfies the angel's focus on the moral weight of the heart, and it completely aligns with the Earthmaster's view of power as a neutral, balancing element. It cemented the idea that the intent of the wielder dictates the morality of the weapon. This leads into part 5, preparing for the greater war, shared resolve. With this philosophical breakthrough finally locked in, the Council could transition from a fractured debate into a unified strategic command. Let's look at how this built into actionable strategy. By accepting that power reflects the heart, the Earth Masters, the angels, and humanity forged a shared resolve. They accepted their shared moral obligations, basically promising to check each other's worst impulses while protecting each other's flanks. They unified their distinct powers. But most importantly, they realized that Belial erasing a kingdom wasn't just some isolated event. It was a vanguard attack. Recognizing this massive looming threat, they shifted focus and prepared their combined forces for the greater war sitting just beyond the horizon. They literally transformed a philosophical debate into a military alliance. And finally, part 6, lessons for future leaders, the true authority. As a diplomatic historian, I've got to emphasize that the true value of this archive isn't just in the history itself. It's in the strategic guidance that offers a new generation of leaders. When you face complex moral dilemmas in your own spheres, remember the conclusion of this historic council. Remember these core truths. Power is inherently neutral. Your intent defines your impact. And your natural authority doesn't come from the strength, resources, or capital you possess. It comes from the purity of your intent and a balanced heart. The greatest hidden risk of leadership is believing that the tools you wield somehow make you righteous. They absolutely do not. You have to actively impart meaning to your actions through your moral choices, day in and day out. So, as we close this classified strategic archive, I want to leave you with a final, vital question to carefully ponder as you step into your own leadership roles. How will your heart shape the power you wield in the wars to come? Keep the Earthmasters, the angels, and humanity in mind, how they found unity in the darkest of halls. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope this historic archive serves you well in your own journey.